Hello, everyone. Just occurs to me to share this little insight with a transit that's happening right now. We have Mercury in Pisces moving into an exact square with Mars. And at the same time, Mars is moving towards the North Node, and Mercury is moving to an exact square to the nodal axis. There are a couple interesting pieces. First and foremost, this is a quick transit. It's not a very long-term thing, so it sort of represents a particular theme emerging relatively quickly within the field, some possible lessons and realizations, and then it'll pass, it'll move on. Anything that involves Mars can be very stimulating, very intense, very powerful, and on the North Node, it's relevant, meaning there's a lot of evolutionary activity here. There's a deeper purpose that's unfolding in this particular process right now over the next couple days. So let me tune in and articulate this. We have to appreciate that with Mercury, the mind can argue anything. Anything can become logically sound. Anything can make sense, because what happens with Mercury is we simply ascribe thoughts to reality. So we give things names. We say, this is what this is what that is. And thus we create definition. And we look at our experiences and we say, okay, this is that and this is that. This creates a sense of intellectual security because we're able to say what things are, which allows us to then communicate. We can talk about certain ideas. We can share certain thoughts, communicate certain premises, and feel consistent in our mind. The challenge with Mercury in Pisces is we can project a total illusion. With Mercury, we're often needing to discern the difference between fact and opinion. Right? Fact is factual. It sort of relates to a collective agreement in terms of what things are. We're all calling this a hand. We might use different names, but we all agree that this is a hand. Versus opinion, it can easily be a preference or a point of view or a perspective. And if we take our perspectives and our opinions, or even in more extreme cases, our illusions, our fantasies, the dream reality that we're seeing out there, and we crystallize it as a fact, that becomes the basis for building a superstructure of logic where one fact builds upon another fact, and we have a whole very logically seeming reality that really fits for us. So then Mars and Gemini, the North Node, comes along and they square each other, and Mercury squares a node. And it's all this information, all this input, all this perspective, all this data that creates a cognitive dissonance relative to what we've established as cohesive. And this can create a lot of anger. It can create a deep sense of restlessness and anxiety relative to the insecurity of that which felt secure intellectually is no longer secure. It can even induce a sense of losing meaning or feeling a sense of lostness and despair when we've put a lot of meaning into some kind of logical construct that doesn't stand on its own. The nature of Mars being very energetic, right? So these can be really powerful and quick experiences that move a lot of energy. The key here, and I would offer two reflections on this. One is to create a little wedge between the thoughts that we think and the conclusions that we make. So it's not valuing, not holding on to so much meaning in the things that we think, in the constructs that we have in our mind. This might mean facing a sort of void of insecurity of not knowing, not having something to fall back upon. And two, there is an opportunity here to pivot and reorient our attention not to our own understanding, to an understanding of reality that is beyond what we can make on our own. So to abstain thus from reactivity, to abstain from really strong and concrete conclusions or really strong and concrete actions that are coming from some basis of fear or insecurity, to defer to a way of thinking that doesn't hold conflict, that isn't bound in duality. There's a teaching in A Course in Miracles that there are really only two kinds of emotions, love and fear. And in a sense, they're both pointing to love. Fear in its very nature is the denial of love. It's the denial of what is inherently true, and thus fear itself points to that which it denies. So we can look at our own thoughts and we can say, I'm going to set up shop and make a conclusion about reality and thus act, make choices, Mars, based upon the dualities of my mind, thinking that my salvation is in resolving these paradoxes. But that would be moving from fear. To acknowledge uncertainty, to acknowledge confusion, and to say, okay, clearly I'm having a perceptual problem. And that's a statement that one of my teachers, David Hoffmeister, often speaks to. We have a perceptual problem. How we are perceiving isn't entirely accurate. So creating a little bit of space in our perceptions and our beliefs means we're not going to be so hasty. And there's an opportunity for a lot of movement, a lot of activity, a lot of new developments to emerge in this little short window over the next 2 or 3 days or so. And so there's just an invitation to stay connected to that flow and being in a place of receptivity to a way of seeing, a way of thinking that isn't bound in conflict. To be open. So even if there's this feeling of conflict, hold that with curiosity. What's wanting to be seen here? The temptation would be to grab onto that and to try to create more thoughts, to do that thing that we do when we try to think ourselves out of uncomfortable feelings. But to meet that and say, okay, clear, there's a perspective here that I haven't totally embodied yet. So those are just some thoughts, and I hope we all enjoy ourselves during this little window.